Jailed for killing a cow. India cracks down on slaughter by sending butchers to jail. Is the state protecting the holy or curbing human rights? I'm Imran Garta, and today's newsmaker is India's sacred cows. It's a career that's a lifeline for many, but could now lead to a lifetime in jail. Butchers in the conservative Indian state of Gujarat now face a life sentence if found guilty of killing a cow. Critics say the law is an attack on personal freedom. And for a country with a secular constitution, many are worried by what they see as the creeping influence of religion. But the calls for a nationwide ban on beef are growing louder. And in some cases, mob justice is swifter than the law. Before people are even being convicted, they're being killed. Rights groups say since the Prime Minister's Hindu Nationalist Party came to power, vigilantes have beaten a dozen Muslims to death over allegations they mistreated cows. Randolph Nogel reports.
पुलिस तक वहाँ पहुँचा तो देखा दो लड़का वहाँ पे बुरी तरह से जमीन में गिर रहा था, तो उसको छटक से हम लोग का पुलिस पार्टी रेस्क्यू किया और हॉस्पिटल लेके आए, नागांव सिविल हॉस्पिटल। वहाँ पे लाने के बाद पता चला कि वो दोनों मर गया।
It's a crime increasingly more common in India. Vigilante attacks on those accused of violating the ban on slaughtering cows.
नहीं, भारत में गाय का रक्षा होना चाहिए, गौ रक्षा तो होना ही चाहिए। भारत ऐसा देश है जहाँ गाय को पूजा जाता है, गाय को माता कहा जाता है, गाय को लक्ष्मी भी कहा जाता है। लेकिन किसी ने कानून हाथ में लेके किसी को मारना, पीटना या हत्या करना, ये बुरी बात है, ऐसा होना नहीं चाहिए।
The attack took place in India's westernmost state of Gujarat, which has the strictest laws for slaughtering cows. In March, the state extended the maximum sentence for the offense from 7 years in prison to life. Muslims who have been attacked say that radical Hindus are ushering in a climate of fear. Aside from mob attacks, there are gangs of vigilantes who patrol in the name of cow protection.
जो भी तस्कर है वो चोरी छिपे तो जा सकता है, और अगर भनक लग गई वो जा नहीं सकता, किसी रोड पे चला जाए उसको उस रोड पे गोरक्षक मिलेंगे।
Cow slaughter is now prohibited in 84% of India, areas which account for more than 99% of the population. In 77% of Indian states or territories that prohibit cow slaughter, police can make an arrest without a warrant. This puts killing cattle in a category of crimes which include murder, rape, dowry deaths, and kidnapping. In Uttar Pradesh, hardline Hindus have a new hero. Yogi Adityanath, a firebrand priest who was elected the state's chief minister. He's known for his inflammatory rhetoric against Muslims. Just 3 days after he was sworn in, 3 Muslim-run butcher shops were set on fire. The attacks have not been the only setbacks for India's largest meat-producing state. Thousands of small meat shops have been shut down by police. Adityanath is a member of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's ruling BJP party, which has been behind the increased penalties for killing cows, and a party seen by some as turning a blind eye to vigilante violence in the name of a Hindu nation. Randolph Nogel, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from New Delhi by Syed Zafar Islam. He's a spokesman for the ruling BJP party. And in Bengaluru, we have Ashwin Sampathkumaran. He's a lawyer and the founder of Care for Cows. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Zafar Islam, if I can begin with you. Under the BJP, in today's India, do cows have more rights than humans?
There is absolutely no truth in it. Let me tell you, I heard your opening remarks. It is a misplaced information that the cow vigilantes have a run here. Absolutely no truth in that. There is a merit in whatever this information you have all gathered, that cow is one animal which is being treated as a sacred animal by majority of this countrymen. Also, cow is worshipped. So there is a demand for a ban across India. However, some of the states have still not banned cow slaughtering. and they're still consuming cow. But most of the states in the country have banned cows, and it is a crime to slaughter cow.
That's
However,
true. Sure, but people are doing terrible things. Sure, you mentioned those groups. Yes. Please continue. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, yeah. So there are some groups in the country in the name of cow vigilantes. They are actually wearing masks during the day and become a cow vigilante, but they are criminals. They are settling their personal scores in the name of cow vigilantes, but the authorities, if you just recall, on 8th of August 2016, the Honorable Prime Minister of the country has very clearly stated that these people will not be spared. Those who take law in their hand will not be spared by the authorities. And this is what has been also stated by most of the chief minister of the state. So let me assure you, people who are taking law in their hand will find themselves behind the bar for sure, and nobody. Yes, there are some incidents, and the government, the ruling party, the authorities have taken cognizance of those incidents, even though there are people who are settling personal scores, but they are behaving as if they are co-protectors. But when they are co-protectors or not, or whether they are not co-protectors, but they cannot take law in their hand, and we are very strictly going to deal with them. And it has been very clearly warned the people of this country, those who will take law in their hand will be dealt very sternly by the authorities.
Okay, but since the BJP came into power, according to Human Rights Watch, attacks against Muslims and Dalits have risen over mere rumors that they sold, bought or killed cows for beef. This is according to Human Rights Watch. They see a correlation. They see a correlation between you coming to power and these attacks. What's your response to Human Rights Watch?
Well, as I said, there are some incidents. I mean, I won't say that there are not a single incident. There are some incidents. And as I said earlier, that the authorities have taken cognizance of those incidents because these people pretend to be cow vigilantes. These people pretend to be cow protectors, but they are not. And there is no merit in what you have stated, that there is the Dalits and the Muslims have been sidelined, or for that matter, there are incidents where Muslims and Dalits have faced atrocities at the hands of the majority community.
I've got multiple incidents here in front of me. I've got multiple incidents in front of me. Okay, let me give you a couple, right? Let me give you a couple. On the 1st of May, 2 Muslim men lynched in Assam accused of trying to steal cows. In April, in Jammu and Kashmir, in Jammu, you had a mob brutally attack 5 members of a nomad cattle herding family, including a 9-year-old girl, on suspicion that they were taking cows for slaughter. Then, let me bring back Human Rights Watch. In September 2015, in Uttar Pradesh, Muhammad Akhlaq, beaten to death with bricks after reports he'd slaughtered a calf. Police seized the meat from his home and sent it for forensic testing to determine whether it was beef. The police detained 6 people. As you say, police detaining people, right, over the death. But villagers protested those arrests by burning vehicles. The government announced compensation of around $15,000 to Akhlaq's family. Okay, fine, compensation. But 2 senior BJP ministers called the killing an accident and a simple misunderstanding. Another BJP legislator, Sangeet Som, criticized the state government for not taking legal action against Akhlaq's family. Doesn't sound as if you're creating the atmosphere, sir, for justice for those people who are being lynched on mere suspicion of eating beef or slaughtering cows. It sounds as if the system's very soft on those people who are cow vigilantes.
No, yes, there were some incidents. But India is a civilized country. There is absolutely no room and no scope for such cow protectors and vigilantes who take law in their hand. There were incidents, I'm admitting that, and those incidents have been reported in the media, and but it has not been reported how strictly the authorities have acted against the culprits. So let me assure you that the Honorable Prime Minister, whatever the local MLAs or the member of BJP parties somebody has said is not relevant or important, because you have to see the ministers, the cabinet minister, the senior leadership, the Honorable Prime Minister of the country.
Yeah, but you're a BJP spokesperson. Hold on. By that logic, you're a BJP spokesperson. I can take whatever you say as completely irrelevant because I must just go to the Prime Minister. You can't You can't use that as a metric. I can say what you say means nothing. I must just look at what the Prime Minister says.
Let me correct you here.
Tell me.
No, I think here, let me correct you. I am the authorized national spokesperson of the party.
And they're elected locally, aren't they?
That's my job to speak on behalf of party and the government. No, they are not supposed to speak. No MLAs and MPs have been authorized to speak on any subject except the authorized spokesperson of the party. I am one of the authorized spokesperson of the party who can speak on any of the subject.
Okay, so for the record then, those local BJP officials, what they say means nothing and it doesn't represent the BJP. We're going to put that on the record. Ashwin, let me bring you in. You believe in cow protection, but do cows have to be protected to the extent that others need to be beaten up and sometimes even killed to protect the sanctity of cows? Surely not, Ashwin. You don't agree with that?
Let me tell you something. Okay, the relationship with the people of this country have with cows is extremely special. It's a very special relationship. Okay, I could really compare it with the relationship people in the West have with dogs. Okay. So let me ask you something. I go to, say,
I've never heard of anybody beaten to death for trying to slaughter a dog in any country, anywhere on earth. But your analogy is granted and understood. Please continue.
Let me tell you something. The point is that, first of all, I condemn the attack made by the cow vigilance. Okay. Right? I do not at all endorse the attacks. I do not at all endorse the attack made upon the alleged cow smugglers or whoever it is. And I completely endorse the statements made by the BJP spokesperson, by the way. Okay, but nevertheless, you can't just, portray the whole country as an evil country,
Nobody said that. Did I say the country is an evil country?
Well, the whole way you portrayed it was something like that.
Maybe you're projecting here.
You get beaten up.
Maybe you're projecting. I'm giving you factual evidence of people who have been beaten to death by mobs on the suspicion of slaughtering cows. You're saying I'm projecting your country as an evil country. Those are your words, not mine. I'm saying something terrible is happening. Isn't there a problem? Do you agree there's a problem, Ashwin?
Whenever there is a law in a country and the people who violate the law, they have to be dealt in that particular way. All right, I don't endorse a particular attack made on the alleged cow smugglers. But if they have made such attacks, or if they have killed someone, the particular individual would have to be punished. Or the particular group of individuals have to be identified and punished. Let me tell you something. In Haryana, in the state of Haryana, the Chief Minister have planned to issue authorized identity cards for, the protectors of cow. All right? Who are, the authorized person who can go ahead and, protect the cows and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, my point is very clear. If someone has violated the law will take its course.
Right. So do you believe somebody should be imprisoned for life for slaughtering a cow?
That's what the law says.
Right. Okay.
That's what the law says. The law says that you get life imprisonment if you slaughter cows, and there have to be such punishments in this country.
Okay. And if you take someone's life on the suspicion of them slaughtering a cow, what should be the punishment, Ashwin?
The punishment is as simple as that. What is the punishment for culpable homicide amounting to murder? And that is a punishment. He has to get it. As simple as that.
Okay, and that's good. That's encouraging. That's encouraging to hear. Let me ask you about the atmosphere then, Ashwin. Do you believe that more can be done, that your country can do better in not creating an atmosphere where people believe that it's okay to take the law into their own hands to protect the cow?
First of all, what needs to be done is that people have to be educated. All right, people have to be educated about the importance of cow. When a person realizes that a living cow is more profitable than a dead cow, and there nobody would actually slaughter the cows. That's
no, hold on. Wouldn't that make somebody even more adamant in defending the sanctity and the rights of the cow? I'm saying people are getting killed. People are getting killed because they're alleged to have been violating the rights of the cow. What about education for those to say you can't just beat someone up or maybe even kill them if somebody else slaughters a cow? Do you believe there might be some education there? Leave it to the police?
Yes. Yes. See, education in the sense, I would not say education, I would say awareness.
Okay.
Awareness, workshops, where you tell them, like, look, this is not how you deal with the alleged cow smugglers. If at all you spot someone slaughtering a cow, what you need to do is call 100, take the police in, and let the police take its action. I will never say that the action should go unnoticed. But what we should, let me give you one example. About 1 month back, when I was driving down to a state of Tamil Nadu, I saw a calf being tied up in a slaughterhouse. And I know that slaughtering of calf is an offense in the state of Tamil Nadu. You know what I did? I just called the police and I waited over there. When the police came over there, I showed them, look, they are slaughtering a calf. Go ahead and file an FIR and you need to rescue the cow. Yeah. And as per the law, there is a high court order where the cow has to be sent to a gaushala, a cow shelter, a sanctuary.
Ashwin,
okay?
do you accept...
the cow was sent to the sanctuary.
Okay, so you follow the law. Do you accept that there are some, actually, more than some, hundreds of millions of Indians who are not Hindu, who are as nationalistic as you are, who believe they are Indian citizens and are patriotic, but they eat beef, they don't have the same religious observance and they don't have the same sort of religious devotion to the cow? Do you accept that they can be equal Indian citizens?
Cows are not protected because of the religious sanctity. Let me tell you something very clearly.
Then
you
why
may
are
take
they?
it as a religious I'll tell you. You have to give me 2 minutes for me to speak, by the way. Okay. For, well, 10,000 years back, humans lived as nomads. All right? They eat whatever they find. They
how long
eat
is this going to take?
Whatever it is. 2 minutes?
Briefer, please.
Okay, see, and here, as a matter of fact, when it comes to an agrarian, a pastoral country like India, cow and the farm animals are their life. The life of farmer cannot be sustained without cows. All right, and cows are extremely important animals, not for milk, but for cow dung.
Okay,
I'm telling
but
you,
you're
milk
saying,
is only a byproduct.
Aren't you playing a bit of a game with me here? Because it seems as if the devotion is religious, but now you're saying it's greater than religious. I'm asking you again, do you accept that there are Indians who don't share the same feelings as yours? And you might be right. You might be absolutely right on multiple levels. Do you accept that there are hundreds of millions of Indians who don't believe as you believe, and therefore for them, it's okay to eat beef?
Let me quote you one example. There is a Gaushala in Uttar Pradesh this is run not by Hindus, but by Muslims. All right? Because in the beginning, the whole intention was that, you have been telling that Hindus are attacking Muslims because they consume meat. There are almost about 100 Gaushalas in India completely managed and run by Muslims.
Okay. Syed Zafar Islam, presumably, I don't want to make presumptions about you. You're a BJP spokesperson. You are a Muslim. Tell me, do you feel as if this is an unfair characterization, as if we're framing it as a Hindu thing? Tell me, Syed Zafar.
See, you have to understand the sentiments. Of course, it is a religious sentiments associated with cow, and majority of the Indians community actually believes cow as a sacred animal. There is no two bones about it. Let me also make you one statement. Like I'm a Muslim, as you rightly said, I cannot consume a pork because it's anti-religion and my religion doesn't permit me to consume pork, and that's why there's a lot of restriction in this country around pork.
In a democracy where Muslims are the majority, would you accept in a democracy where Muslims are the majority, fine, don't eat pork, but don't crack down on those who are non-Muslim who want to eat pork because they can't live according to your rules. You accept in a democracy, you can't just go with majority or mob rule. You can't impose the majority's will on the minority. Are minorities being imposed upon is my question.
Let me correct you. Not at all. Let me. See, all I said, the sentiments, and one should respect the sentiment. Having said that, let me clarify your assumption is incorrect, because I am a Muslim. I feel as secure, as nationalist as any other Hindus. Nobody can question my integrity with my country. Nobody question my nationalist and patriotic thoughts. Likewise, nobody can question any other Muslim. Having said that, There are something which is associated with religion and one should respect it. That's why 90% Muslims do not consume cow hair. Let me tell you also, 95% Muslims do not consume cow even if it is available, because cow is something which is being consumed by many people, even Hindus in this country, even Christians. They consume cows. It's not only Muslims which
it's not that black and white.
Let me also tell you one more thing, which is very important statement. Let me also make very important statement that in this country, it is not for majority, it is not minority, it's a democracy. Everyone has the same right. Everyone and government of this day wants to carry everyone along the same line and along with them, and they want to be treated equally, because the Constitution provides equality for every citizen of this country, and nobody can take away that protection from any citizen of this country.
Let's bring in Irfan Engineer now from Mumbai. He's the director of the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution. Irfan, thanks for joining us. Are cow vigilantes a problem in your country? Said Zafar Islam and Ashwin Sampath Kumaran don't think they're as big of a problem as we are making it out to be. Are they a problem?
It is a problem, and we have had many such incidents. At least in 2 cases, people were lynched to death. One in Dadri in Uttar Pradesh. Akhlaq Khan was lynched to death only on the ground that on suspicion that he had stored beef in his fridge. Nobody knew, there was no verification, there was just an allegation, and he was killed. Then recently Pehlu Khan, who was a dairy farmer, taking his, he purchased a cow and he was taking to his village for dairy farming. Some cow vigilantes got together, started beating him, stopped his vehicle and beating him up. He was along with his 2 sons. Pehlu Khan died, his son was injured seriously. There were such incidents in Himachal Pradesh, in Latehar,
now, Irfan, allow me to come in here, and my apologies. The other 2 gentlemen are saying these are isolated incidents, and when the culprits are caught, they will be punished according to the full letter of the law. They are criminals, they should be punished, and they don't represent other cow protectors. What's your response to that?
No, what happens is that even in Pehlu Khan's case, or even in Akhlaq Khan's case in Dadri, police normally, instead of, yes, in 1 or 2 cases they have booked that a few individuals from lynch mob, but they also put cases against the victims of this lynch mob and cow vigilantism, those who are accused of taking cow, transporting cow illegally, they are also booked. So when police, instead of taking action against, strict action against this lynch mob, files cases against the victims of this lynch mob, the lynch mob feels encouraged. These people get bail in 1 or 2, in most cases they are not even arrested, and it is people who are handling the cow that are booked for under various
so then let's ask Ashwin.
Offenses and
that's a good point. Yes. Okay. Finish your last point, please, sir, because we are running out of time.
To that.
Yes. Okay. Great. So let me bring
and it is.
Finish your point, sir.
It is because the kind of action that police takes, that cow vigilantes are not afraid of law and feel encouraged to carry on their activities.
Okay. So Ashwin, you said education is needed. The police also have to be educated, don't they?
Well, yes, but more than that, you can't just put the whole blame on, what he just said is the cow vigilance feel encouraged. That is wrong. The simple reason being,
I would feel encouraged if I beat someone up and the police were soft on me. I would feel encouraged to do it more.
Let me tell you something. The Honorable Prime Minister of India have made it very clear that in the name of law, few people are taking the whole aspect of co-protection into wrong levels, and he condemned it. He condemned it, by the way.
Okay, and you're happy with that?
Which means that the government, yes,
okay.
Which means that the government have been very clear with the stance. That is, if somebody is taking law in their hands with the emblem or with the beacon of cow protection, they'll be punished. They're very clear with it. Now, there are plenty of...
Imran, can I just make a point?
Okay, so, Ashwin, you made your point, and very briefly, please, Said Zafar Islam, the final 20 seconds of the program. Please go.
Well, I just want to ensure and assure that there are some incidents, stray incidents, isolated incidents. Yes, they have been noticed by the authorities, and the strictest warnings have been given to those who take law in their hand. And if at all anybody attempts to take law in their hand, will be punished severely. And that message has gone to everyone, those criminals who were actually pretending to be co-vigilantes, co-protectors, but actually they were criminals and settling personal scores with people, even be it Muslim or some other people. There are Hindus who have also been killed purely because they were smuggling cows.
Understood.
So it's not only isolated incident that only Muslims have been killed or Hindus have also been killed. But let me assure you that those incidents are the incidents of the past. In future, nobody will be allowed to take law in their action, and strict warning have been given to co-vigilantes.
Great. We certainly hope so. I'm sorry, I can't because I've got to move on to other segments. I've got guests in Lebanon waiting for me, and I've got other segments waiting. I apologize, but I've got to move on. It was good to have all of you on the program. I hope to have you on the program again. This is a very important topic, and I'm glad we had this conversation. Said Zafar Islam, Ashwin, Sampat Kumaran, and Irfan Engineer. Thanks so much for joining us. Still ahead, Lebanon has more Syrian refugees per capita than any other nation. How is the government changing the way it deals with the influx? Sandra Gutman goes to Beirut to find out. And is this the end of Japan's commitment to peace? Prime Minister Shinzo Abe pushes to rewrite pacifism out of the constitution. All this week, we've been taking an in-depth look at Lebanon, where 1 in 4 people have fled from Syria. The country has more refugees per capita than any other nation, but the government says it's now reaching breaking point. In response, the army has started evicting refugees in their thousands from makeshift camps. But without money, medical care, and now shelter, they say they have nowhere to go. So, what's the thinking behind the government's new strategy for dealing with the mass influx of people? Sandra Gutman reports in part 3 of our special coverage from Lebanon.
Wael often wonders when he'll walk again. He was injured in Syria and had to flee. But here in Lebanon, he can't get the help he needs.
I can't just go to any hospital. Not all doctors accept me, and treatment is expensive here. We can't even pay for a taxi to get to a hospital in Tripoli. I can't even afford 1 session of physiotherapy.
More than 1,000 Syrians live in this camp in Tripoli and rely almost entirely on aid. For more than 4 years, many have struggled to build a new life. Syrian refugees in Lebanon must apply for residency. Last year, the government scrapped a $200 fee for refugees registered with the UNHCR. But since then, more than 60% of Syrian asylum seekers have lost their legal status. Without it, they can't get jobs and risk being detained. Khaled is one of many Syrians who lives with that fear. He says the price for safety in Lebanon was his freedom.
Not long ago, I crossed a checkpoint and ended up in jail for a few days. I had to keep going back to Beirut to renew my residency, but now they told me to leave the country. Where do they expect me to go? I don't even have 10 lira to feed my family.
Down the road is where loved ones are buried. Refugees are told there's no room in the cemeteries. Proper tombs are expensive. Even in death, they struggle to find their place. Lebanon's government says the country is at breaking point. Syrian refugees make up 1 in every 4 people. And the economy is being squeezed. It's thought the Syrian conflict has cost Lebanon nearly $18 billion. Some Lebanese business owners, like Mervet, are frustrated.
Now there are too many shops, and Syrians offer lower prices. Many Lebanese businesses also choose to hire Syrians instead of locals because they cost less.
But the only jobs on offer for Syrians are in cleaning, agriculture, or manufacturing. We're inside an industrial zone in Beirut's suburbs. There's around 70 factories here, and around 300 Syrians, mostly refugees, work and live here. Jamel has worked as a mechanic in Beirut for 17 years. He's noticed a change in how people treat him. He thinks it's because he's Syrian.
Before the war, I used to get $40 to $50 a day. After the war, I've been getting paid $10, maybe $20. I accept the work anyway, so I don't fall into debt. But I live in a garage.
Lebanon cannot continue and will not continue to sustain the consequences of hosting 1.5 million displaced on its territory.
The government says it needs $10 billion in aid to rebuild infrastructure and continue putting hundreds of thousands of Syrian children through school. But it also wants to start sending people back to Syria.
There are safe areas with the regime, and there are safe areas with the anti-regime forces where these Syrians can go instead of keeping flooding to Lebanon. We are trying to limit this, and to try to deal with it at our best, but this is not something that is easy.
Many Syrians dream of returning home, but few here want to take that risk before the war ends. In that time, an entire generation will have grown up in camps, many out of school and with no sense of where home is. Sandra Gatman in Beirut, the Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this further, I'm joined now from Beirut by Bassam Khawaja. He's a researcher, Lebanon researcher at Human Rights Watch, and Middle East analyst Halim Shebaya from the Lebanese American University. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us. Halim, let me start with you. The Lebanese army evicting refugees, is that the right thing to do?
I mean, the Lebanese army evicting refugees, if it was done in the proper way and if there were valid security reasons and if it was communicated in the right way, then perhaps there would be a discussion about it. But as far as I know, the eviction took place in a way that caused a lot of outcry among activists and among the residents of the camps that were evicted, especially given the very short time limit that they were given to evacuate. I believe it was 2 days or 3 days. And a lot of these refugees had already moved, and a lot of them, as a result of that eviction, lived in dire conditions, as reported by organizations and activists who were working in these camps. So in that sense, I think, in my opinion, it wasn't the right move, especially in the way it was done, and especially because there wasn't any alternative given to these evicted residents. Where do they go next after being evicted from these camps?
Right, Bassam, so it could have been okay if it was done properly, but it was not done properly. Do you agree with that?
It really depends on what the justification the army has given for the evictions. As you know, in Lebanon, refugees aren't in official camps, and so they have to get their own accommodations. And this is really the largest eviction we've seen on this type of scale, 10,000 people being evicted and really just given a few days to find alternative accommodations. This means, that they, in many cases, have to stop sending their children to school. They're cut off from work and being able to support their families. And as the situation gets worse and worse in Lebanon, where about 70% of refugees now live below the poverty line, they really don't have the financial means to be moving and starting a new life yet again. And for some of these refugees, this is maybe the third or fourth time they've been evicted. And so we're very concerned about the announcement that came down a few weeks ago.
Halim, as things stand, do you sympathize with the Lebanese government that it has this massive problem? I mean, more than a quarter of its population has increased with the Syrian refugees coming in. I took that same figure and I transposed it to the United States, increasing the population by 25%. That would mean 83 million people going to the United States. Do you have sympathy with the authorities that they just don't know how to handle this?
Well, I have sympathy with the Lebanese people and with the Syrian refugees. I have an understanding about the gravity of the situation that the government has to deal with. But in my opinion, the government has been incompetent in dealing with the Syrian refugee situation. And especially recently, the Syrian refugees have been used as a scapegoat by different parties, not just one party in government, to warn about the security threats and to warn about the economic situation, and without offering alternatives and without even having a clear policy that takes into account the various needs of the Syrian refugees as well as the host communities. So in that sense, I have an understanding that Lebanon is passing in a refugee crisis. It's huge, as you mentioned, in terms of on a per capita basis. I think it's the largest country that hosts refugees. But using refugees as scapegoats in political discourse does not help. Does not help the refugees, does not help the government, does not help Lebanon as a whole.
Bassam, are they being used as scapegoats?
Absolutely. We're seeing a large amount of demonization of the refugees by politicians, as well as troubling rhetoric that's increased over the past year about deportation of Syrians back to Syria, which would be illegal under international law. Look, there's no question that Lebanon has taken on an enormous burden, hosting about 1.5 million Syrians in this country, the largest per capita in the world. And they've really put larger and richer countries to shame in doing so. But they've also enacted very problematic policies, such as the residency policy for Syrians here, that have made it very difficult for Syrians to survive and have made the political situation much more difficult.
Yeah, but this sounds almost like the old argument used towards Palestinian refugees, those in the refugee camps from way back when, right? It's like, if we give you more rights, then you might stay forever and you can't go back to your homeland. Are we seeing the same thing playing out here?
Absolutely, and it was really with the Palestinian experience that led Lebanon to make the decision, unlike Jordan and Turkey, not to open refugee camps, but at the same time not to allow them to work and make it very difficult for them to maintain legal status in the country, which again makes it impossible for them to support their families. And so coming out of that experience of the last 50, 60 years, really I think the Lebanese government is shooting itself in the foot with this policy. It's making it much more difficult for the refugees to support themselves and for the Lebanese government to maintain control over the situation.
Halim, Saad al-Hariri, the Prime Minister, saying the international community should provide Lebanon with $10 to $12 billion over the next 7 years. And that sounded good, but then sort of in the next sentence, he basically suggests that if you don't, we can't keep them. How do you interpret that?
Yeah, I mean, it could have been a negotiating technique or as part of his sales pitch to try to convince them to give the funds that he's requesting. But I think it's very dangerous to use that language of we can't keep them, especially since there was a petition 3 or 4 days ago sent to the U.S. State Department and to the U.S. Senate by a number of Lebanese people. Its title was, let the Syrian refugees leave and let them go to safe zones. And unfortunately, this type of rhetoric, and that Prime Minister Hariri said when he says that we can't keep them, treats refugees, and excuse the terminology I will use, it's almost as if we're treating refugees as an inconvenient piece of furniture in the house that we don't know where to place, and then we're just saying, well, you know, give us the money or give us somewhere to put them, and then it's just treating them as an entity with that just has to be dealt with, very much demonizes and also dehumanizes their situations, and doesn't really help the country, because as we well know, there's a lot of controversy and a lot of debate about the how efficient and how suitable safe zones are in this period, and a lot of rights organizations organizations and a lot of humanitarian organizations, such as the Norwegian Refugee Council, have said that it's not really the right step to take in this at this point in time. So I don't think this language of we can't keep them does not really help them. It does not help the government. It has no it has no tangible effect on the ground, basically.
Bassam, there have been trash protests, there have been corruption protests. People are unhappy with their economy. To what extent, Bassam, is the refugee crisis linked to the economic squeeze on Lebanon? To what extent can we connect the two?
Sure. So there are no real numbers on how the Syrian refugees have affected the Lebanese economy. What we have seen is really the presence of so many Syrians has exacerbated problems that have existed in Lebanon for decades now. And so we see this with waste, we see this with the healthcare, we see this with education. The education system in Lebanon was weak way before this presence of the Syrians in the country. But at the same time, we're seeing Syrians being scapegoated and blamed for these pre-existing conditions that politicians simply don't want to deal with and have not dealt with in the proper way for the past few decades now.
Okay, Halim, they call you in the room, the Prime Minister, the President, and the Speaker. They say, Halim, in a sentence, how can we make this better? What would you tell them?
Well, I'll tell them the Syrian refugee or the Syrian refugee crisis has to be seen as an opportunity, because in my opinion, the whole discourse that we're seeing is just a symptom of the many problems that Lebanon is facing. Lebanon doesn't have we should have had parliamentary elections 4 years ago, and now even this year we might not have them. There are so many problems. It should be used as an opportunity to basically put a policy for the long term to how to deal with the refugees, how to deal with Lebanon's internal problems, and with a focus on really asking the right questions rather than asking always how to deal with the refugee crisis, asking the more important question that we can do something about and that the President and the Prime Minister can do something about. Basically the question being, how can we improve the state of affairs in Lebanon? How can we improve the governance? How can we fight corruption? How can we improve the services and the infrastructure? And when you do that, I think there will be a positive spillover on dealing with the refugee crisis.
Okay. Incredible situation in Lebanon, and of course everybody hopes the war in Syria next door ends, which is the root cause of all the trouble in the region at the moment, it seems. Bassam Khawaja and Halim Shibaya, it's been a pleasure having both of you on the program. Thanks so much for joining us. Up next, a first-hand look at a group of Syrians who are transforming their war-ravaged surroundings into a playground.
بالنسبة لرياضة الباركور هي مهمة كثير بالنسبة لنا. بتنسينا الحرب اللي احنا فيه وبتنسينا الحياة اللي عشناها، بتنسينا انه احنا مش نفس العيشة اللي كنا عايشينها زمان. احنا بعيشة جديدة بس شو معوضين الاشي اللي احنا فيه برياضة الباركور. بسبب الأوضاع اللي صارت في سوريا، الحرب اللي صار، الدمار والقصف الطيران، اضطرينا نمزح برات سوريا. نزحنا على الأردن، دمار وحرب وقصف، ما بي شيء يعني صار، كله البيوت مدمرة، مدارس مدمرة. وبعد يعني روحنا على بلادنا، على سوريا رجعنا لقينا البلد كلها مدمرة يعني. بدال ما كنا نقرأ صرنا نلعب رياضة الباركور بمدارس المدمرة. الرياضة كانت يعني بالنسبة لنا مو شيء سهل إنه نتدربها بمنطقة الحرب يعني. كانت الحركات تكون صعبة علينا يعني، لأنه ما في مكان ضابط نتدرب فيه ولا إنه نادي، كنا نتدرب بالمناطق المدمرة. والرياضة يعني بتعني لنا شيء كثير يعني، إنه بنحس بالحرية وقت نمارسها، وبتعطينا أمل لقدام يعني، تكون يعني بي نبض يعني، بي تقدم إن شاء الله، راح يكون بي استقلال وتفوق لقدام يعني. احنا شكلنا فريق بسوريا لرياضة الباركور ونمارسها والدمار والامور هاي، يعني بنوصل رسالة انه الحياة ماشية، مش راح توقف يعني، لو بي حرب لو بي دمار، بس احنا يعني حياتنا ماشية والمستقبل راح يكون افضل ان شاء الله. يعني لو كان عندي حرية ممارسة رياضة الباركور بأي مكان بالعالم يعني، يعني إنه ما فيش حرب ولا شيء، إنه بقدر أمارسها بأي مكان، بختار أني بلدي سوريا يعني، لأنه هي بلدي وإن شاء الله إنه مش راح أتخلى عنها ولا أي إنسان يتخلى عن بلدي. طبعا يعني أنا سعيد إنه الرياضة هاي قاعد تكون لها إعجابات ومشاهدات يعني، مشان العالم تعرف إنه الحياة ماشية بسوريا مو موقفة، ويكون يعني في مستقبل وازدهار للرياضة السورية.
For 70 years together, we've understood and protected the Constitution. The important thing here is not to change the Constitution, but to let it continue to serve its purpose. The Constitution must not be changed.
Protesters in Japan say the Prime Minister wants to rewrite the Constitution, and they're not happy about it. Demonstrators who are deeply aware of the country's military past say their post-war commitment to peace is of utmost importance. The current Constitution came into effect after World War II and rejects war as a way to settle diplomatic disputes. Japan has an army of about 250,000 active duty troops, but it exists solely for self-defense. In 2014, Japan reinterpreted the law to allow their armed forces to serve in peacekeeping missions overseas. The government now says the law needs a new clause to protect the role of the self-defense forces. But some fear Shinzo Abe's administration is using fears over North Korea and China as an excuse to revive militarism. Well, from Washington, D.C., I'm joined by Andrew Oros. He's a Japan specialist and the author of Japan's Security Renaissance. Thanks so much for joining us. Andrew, interesting that you call it a renaissance. Is what Prime Minister Abe wants to do in line with what the majority of Japanese people want, that they need a change and they want to go away from pacifism?
Well, what Prime Minister Abe is seeking to do is not to move away from pacifism, but to create a more robust self-defense force that's more capable of creating deterrence against North Korea, against China, and other Japanese threats. So I think that what we see in elections is that Prime Minister Abe's general approach is very widely supported. His party has by far the largest support rate of any party in Japan.
And to what extent are those who say, hey, Imperial Japan did terrible things, it did unspeakable things, and it brought ruin upon us. Our major cities were nuked and firebombed. We don't want this to happen again. To what extent are those voices noisy, and to what extent can they stop him from this 2020 vision?
Well, Japan is a democracy, and so what the people want is generally what will happen. It gets filtered through the Liberal Democratic Party, the ruling party in Japan. And so I think that the people's voices are very strong. And we've seen this since Prime Minister Abe became Prime Minister at the end of 2012. Many of the things that he sought to do were watered down significantly, including the reinterpretation of the Constitution, which, as you mentioned, happened in 2014, and then was put into a series of new laws in 2015. What was actually enacted into the law in 2015 was quite a bit different than what Mr. Abe had originally sought, and I think that shows the power of the public in these debates.
Yeah, just over 2 years on, that collective self-defense reinterpretation, has it been seen as a success? Do the Japanese generally see their peacekeeping roles as valuable and valid?
Yeah, I think that here's a factoid about post-war Japan that's very strong in Japanese memory. Not a single Japanese soldier or aviator, sailor has died in combat in over 70 years. And Japanese people are very proud of that, and they're not keen to see their soldiers go into war. And they'll go to the streets to protest that. And I think that's something that Prime Minister Abe and his party are very aware of. So that kind of departure of Japan fighting side by side with the United States or other allies all around the world, I think is totally unthinkable in contemporary Japan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but then, so soldiers are not dying, but when, for example, ISIS, executes 2 Japanese hostages, which side wins? Or, when it swings on the spectrum, which way does it go? Does it increase the case of those who say, hey, we need a more robust stronger constitution, or does it strengthen the case of the pacifists?
Well, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the specific point of the Constitution, because that's what sort of made this a news story recently, right? It was last week on the 70th anniversary of the Constitution that Prime Minister Abe said in an interview that he wanted to see the Constitution changed by 2020, which is the year of the Tokyo Olympics. But what I think is important to stress is that he himself did not say that he wanted to erase the Article 9 of Japan's Constitution that prohibits war potential, that prohibits the state to use force to settle international disputes. He said that he wanted to amend to add that to acknowledge that Japan in fact has one of the most capable militaries in the world today, which they call their self-defense forces. And what he wants to see is the Constitution to say explicitly that these self-defense forces are a part of Japan's post-war identity and that they are constitutional, because some legal scholars still question whether these self-defense forces are constitutional or not. So what I would say in sum is that what Prime Minister Abe seeks to do, at least what he says that he seeks to do, is to make the Constitution match with the reality that Japan is one of the major military powers of the world today.
Yeah, Constitution matching with reality. Some would call that pragmatism. With a belligerent North Korea, with a growing China that might be expansionist, what about the fears that there are those who say, hold on, we're not too worried about you maybe defending yourself if North Korea or China attack you, but we're afraid you're going to take preemptive strikes. Is there anything in what Abe wants to do that suggests that he wants Japan to take preemptive strikes?
Well, there is a discussion in Japan about preemptive strikes recently. This is why I titled my recent book, Japan's Security Renaissance, because I think what's happened in the last 10 years in Japan is a big change society-wide about what you're able to discuss and what you're not able to discuss. There were a lot of taboos in Japan in the post-war period about things that you just couldn't talk about in the media, and one of them was, should Japan have preemptive strike capabilities? This is now something that is being discussed in Washington just last week at a major conference. The former Japanese defense minister said that he supported this idea as part of a study group. So it is something that is being discussed. I don't think it's something that's politically viable at the moment, but I think it's important that it's being openly discussed, just like other issues like whether Japan should have nuclear weapons or not, whether Japan should have longer range weapons capabilities.
Okay, fascinating points. Intriguing country. I wish I actually understood Japanese to get a deeper dive, but it was great learning from you, Andrew Oros. Thanks so much for joining us.
Da mucha indignación que asesinos, violadores, ladrones, torturadores puedan llegar a estar libres por la ley de 2x1. Por eso mi bronca y mi indignación es la que me trajo por acá.
Pues quiero aprovechar a felicitar al Congreso de la Nación por la celeridad con que comenzó a resolver el tema del vacío legal que había dejado esta desafortunada ley del 2x1.
That's all for this edition of the Newsmakers with me, Imran Garda. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.